This is a good bill. It's a common sense law enforcement bill. Simply states, minor level crime now, local law enforcement can contact ICE to get these people detained, processed, and deported. These people, these criminals that come across that inflict violence on American families, they just get more and more emboldened.
Expired.
To the gentleman.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. They just get more and more emboldened. And they create larger and more heinous crimes. And that's exactly what happened here in the Lake and Riley murder.
I'm sorry that Representative Collins has left. I was just presented with a tweet that he sent out about the New Jersey-born Episcopalian Bishop Marianne Budd, who performed a service as part of the inaugural ceremonies, and apparently he was not pleased with what she had to say, and he wrote, "The person giving this sermon should be added to the deportation list." And I would have asked him whether he was serious about that. Of course, the Episcopalian bishop is a U.S. citizen, but of course, that's very much in the spirit of the times. Reminds me of the period of the Alien and Sedition Acts in 1798, when there was an effort to use the Alien and Sedition Acts, which have been invoked recently by the new president, in order to persecute the political opponents of the administration, as well as to chase down and kick out of the country all of the dangerous French immigrants who were spreading revolutionary propaganda in the country. And a friend of Jefferson's wrote to him, John Taylor, to say how exhausted he was by all of the political fighting and the demonizing of immigrants and the attempt to shut the borders down and to attack political opponents as enemies of the state and so on. And Jefferson wrote him this beautiful letter back. You should check it out online if you can. It's a letter to John Taylor. And in it, he counseled patience. He said, "A little patience, and the reign of witches shall pass over, their spells dissolve, and the people, recovering their true sight, recover the true principles of their government." In the meantime, he said, we're suffering all of the horrors and indignities of the hysteria. But he said, if the game runs against us at home sometimes, as inevitably it will, then, he said, we must have patience, because this is a game where principles are at stake. Our colleagues have spoken up for nothing other than due process. The idea that the bipartisan compromise that has been cemented in law since 1996 should stand, saying that we want the immediate detention and deportation of undocumented people who actually commit crimes. And in an effort to drive a wedge in this body, they now say they want to move from people who've been convicted of crimes, which obviously accords completely with common sense, to people who've just been accused or charged with crimes, even if the charges are dropped, even for offenses as small as shoplifting. In any event, we don't claim somehow that one side or the other is morally righteous and the other is morally wrong. We're trying to have a public policy debate. And the role of public emotion in public policy debates, Mr. Speaker, is an interesting thing. Some people think it's enough to show up and say there's been a terrible event. There's been a sickening murder or rape. Therefore, you must pass our bill, without even reading the bill, without even looking to see what's in the bill. Does it make sense as a matter of public policy? If that were the standard they actually believed in, they would be voting for all of the gun safety legislation they've been rejecting, because every time there's a massacre, whether it's in Connecticut or Florida or Texas or Illinois or any of our communities, we come in and we say, we want what the American people want in public opinion polls, a universal violent criminal background check. We want a ban on military-style assault weapons. There's no reason 18-year-olds should be bearing AR-15s and showing up in classrooms and churches and synagogues with weapons of mass destruction. If it were enough just to appeal to emotion, they would be voting with us. But no, they say, well, that conflicts with their public policy understanding. Well, at the very least, you think they would have the burden of telling us what they do support. But we never hear anything. You don't hear a peep out of them about gun violence, because the Second Amendment, as they misinterpret it, is sacrosanct, as well as their NRA support and contributions. That's what they bow down to, is the National Rifle Association when it comes to this policy debate, because they won't advance anything that conflicts with the NRA, even if the Supreme Court says it's perfectly fine. We had a ban on assault weapons for a decade. It was perfectly constitutional. We have the Brady Act. We have a violent criminal background check. But even though expanding it to make it universal would save hundreds or thousands of lives, American citizen lives, every year, they won't touch it. So don't invoke emotion selectively and say everybody's got to go along with what you're saying without even analyzing the policy implications and the constitutional implications. If you're not willing to put anything on the table to reduce the sickening death toll for gun violence in America, there's nothing in the world that approaches what we've got here. It's 25 times higher than the EU countries. Dozens of times higher than Japan, Canada, UK, you name it. And yet they pretend as if there's no problem. And yet they seize on an opportunistic bill like this to try to drive a wedge within our Congress and within our people. I hope they do better when we get to the second week of this new administration than freeing violent criminal felons who stormed this Capitol and attacked our police officers, and then bringing forward a bill like this to try to cover up for their complicity with that sickening violence against our constitutional order. I yield back.